There's currently a challenger with over 1000 LP who only plays Zoe support. They can 1v1 late game 80 carries without even having to land a single ability. We have an 800 LP Grandmaster who's playing Assassin Lee Sin mid, one-shotting any junglers that try to gank him. And a 1000 LP Pyke mid who literally doesn't even farm or lane and just perma roams on the enemy bot lane for free kills. We'll be going over all these picks and more as we uncover the 5 new off-meta picks that are stomping challenger around the world. But really quick, if you're stuck and you just can't rank up, then Skill Capped is the solution you've been looking for. We have the most extensive collection of premium courses in the entire world. We focus on the things that actually help you climb ranks and simplify them so they're easy to understand. And the best part is you can try our service completely risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using Skill Capped, you get your money back, no questions asked. So click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so starting us off, we have the 1000 LP Challenger on the North American server who only plays Zoe support that goes by the name Peeking Tutorial. At the start of the game, they always look to get the push advantage by autoing minions and using their Q to poke the enemy. This is so once they're level 2, they can position themselves behind the wall in the river to land a sleepy bubble as the wave is crashing. This completely catches players off guard and results in them bursting the enemy to near half HP just from this one combo. For the remainder of the laning phase, their goal is going to be to keep the lane pushed and the enemy pinned at their tower with the minions. This is pretty key, as when the wave is pushed, you'll have constant access to the river wall to try and land those sleepy bubbles on the enemy. One mechanic that's very important is that you don't always want to damage enemies hit by your bubble. For example, when your teammate has another form of crowd control, such as Jin W, then it's actually better to not damage the opponent while they're asleep. Then right as your teammate is going to land their CC spell, you drop your damage. This keeps them chain CC'd and prevents them from escaping. Now, if you're the one being pushed in, it's important to keep a ward in the river. This way you can still land your bubble when an enemy moves into the river. Often, just doing this once will do enough damage to get you back control of your lane so you can be the one pushing. Otherwise, if you've poked an enemy low enough, running at them to land a bubble point blank can be a viable strategy, since if it lands, you're guaranteed to get the kill. Additionally, Zoe support actually has better roams than you'd think. Her ability, Spell Thief, lets her pick up summoner spells, and when using them grants her 3 damaging bolts that fly at enemies. You can see here, Zoe misses her Q and is able to solo kill the enemy jungler with nothing but her flash, ignite, and auto attacks. This actually makes her very strong in the early skirmishes, as the more summoner spells the enemy uses, the stronger she becomes. For example, here's Zoe support, level 5, ganking a level 9 Qiyana mid. She starts out missing her Q and uses the smite she picked up for damage instead. She then lands a point blank E and moves to pick up the ignite Qiyana used on Aatrox. She then lands a Q on the sleeping Qiyana into ignite to finish her off. After the laning phase, your goal will be to swap with your mid laner to then siege the tower there. With how many walls there are around mid lane, it makes it easy to land your sleepy bubble and poke the enemy if they try to defend the tower. Once you then take that tower, the main strategy is to push waves mid into pivoting to dragons and baron when they spawn. Zoe's support becomes much stronger both inside the jungle terrain, where she can land sleepy bubbles over walls, as well as jump over them with her ultimate, but also in teamfights in general, where she can pick up a lot of summoner spells being used. So your main goal in the mid to late game is to control the vision around these objectives and then look to constantly poke as the enemy team tries to get vision of the area. Once an enemy is low enough, this can set up easy picks, which can then turn into number advantages to take the objective. The nice thing about Zoe support is you scale very well to the point that you will be able to 1v1 enemy carries as if you were playing her mid lane. In fact, just like you saw in the intro, Zoe support can literally miss every single skill shot and still kill a level 15 Ezreal with nothing but auto attacks, a Ghostblade active pickup, and ignite. Just do be aware though, you are squishy and lack an escape, so you can be extremely easy to kill if your sleepy bubble and flash are on cooldown. Now for the build. The rank 1 Zoe support always takes flash ignite for summoner spells. For runes, they take Airy with Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, and Scorch, and Ghost Borrow and Relentless Hunter in their secondary. This actually makes a lot of sense, as Ghost Borrow will give them more vision, allowing them to land those sleepy bubbles over walls, while Relentless Hunter boosts their roaming ability. For the skill order, you want to take Q level 1, E level 2, and W level 3, then max Q, then E, then W, with a point in your ultimate whenever you can. For items, you always want to start Spell Thief's Edge with 2 health pots. The main build is to go Liandry's, Boots of Lucidity, Horizon Focus, and Vigilant Wardstone. Liandry's may seem a bit strange, as you'd think something like Luden's for more burst damage or Everfrost for more crowd control would be better options. However, as you saw in the earlier clips, the main source of damage in fights will be most consistently coming from your Spell Thief bolts when you cast a summoner spell. So the constant burn damage from Liandry's ends up out DPSing other options in the long run. For situational items, look to build either Banshee's Veil if you're dying too much, or Oblivion Orb if your team needs anti-heal. You can also pick up an early Dark Seal if you you ever get ahead early, but surprisingly, the rank 1 Zoe support never turns it into a Mage Eyes even at max stacks. This does make sense, as Zoe can be difficult to stay alive with, which you can tell is the case by their average deaths being over 5 per game. Next, going from a mid lane champion being played as a support, we have a jungler being played mid. It's a Lee Sin mid with an assassin build, and there's currently a player around 800 LP Grandmaster on EU West with a 67% win rate who goes by the handle Rain. The early game strategy is that of a typical melee versus range matchup where you can see the early push. Lee Sin is actually really good at this since he can use his W to both shield and heal him up during this time. Once the wave crashes on his tower and rebounds, that's when he starts to look for trades. A nice trick is to use your trinket ward to ward hop and chase mages down the lane to win the trade even harder. Once you hit level 3, you have a couple of trade patterns to look out for. First, if one of your minions gets close to the enemy, jump to it and simply look to land an E for poke. You can also try and sneak in an auto attack if the enemy is in range. The goal here is to trade health with the enemy, and once they're below 50%, you then look to all in. Again, strategically use that early trinket ward to get a winning trade as needed, as once the enemy is below half health, a single Q landing guarantees their death. Once you hit level 6, you want to look for opportunities to clear the wave with an E into one auto attack on each caster. Your roaming is actually quite good, not only due to the mobility in Lee Sin's kit, but also because you'll be building assassin and can often 100-0 anyone you find. This mobility and burst also makes it easier for him to escape ganks than most traditional mid laners. And if a jungler is too squishy, well, you can just turn on them to burst them down. Additionally, if you aren't able to get the push advantage to roam, then you want to call for ganks, since Lee Sin is amazing at setting them up. A big part of this playstyle will be assassinating squishy targets, and then instead of standing your ground, you want to look to immediately escape. Even if you're low on health, as long as you have your ult up, you can often just drop all your damage to one-shot a target and kick the other away. In fact, this assassin playstyle is very cooldown dependent, where you want to engage, use all your abilities, into then escaping, waiting for cooldowns and your energy, then re-engaging. Once laning phase ends, you'll be transitioning into a side lane. You really need to be facing a matchup you win, where you can either threaten to kill them or simply get them pushed to their tower. If you end up facing a fed top laner, ideally, you need to call for help ganking them to swing the matchup in your favor. Once you get the snowball going and have the winning side lane matchup, it makes snowballing the rest of the game much easier. You push side lanes, and if an enemy doesn't come to defend, you can take towers fast with your high attack damage build. Meanwhile, you look for opportunities to rotate off this push and flank behind opponents to get number advantage fights. When it comes to team fighting, you want to fish for Qs on squishy targets. When one lands, you can often just one-shot them with your ultimate. And of course, looking to land the insect, where you Q into a ward hop, ult, to kick enemies towards your teammates. You'll often want to make use of brushes as well, waiting patiently to land a Q on a squishy target to one-shot them into escaping. A big part of the playstyle is landing a Q into E to one-shot squishies. Or if someone is in melee range, look to land the Q into ult, then follow up with your second part of your Q into E to one-shot them. Another important combo to know is that you can Q into flashing into melee range, and this then lets you instantly kick them, CCing them as the Q lands, then follow it up with the second portion of your Q and E to one-shot targets. And funnily enough, you can even poke by just landing Q into auto attack and ward hopping away. Now, for the build, you take Flash Ignite with an Electrocute rune page with defensive runes in your secondary. For the skill order, take W level 1, Q level 2, and E level 3. Then max Q first, E second, and W last with a point in your ult whenever you can. For items, start Dorn's Blade in one health pot, and the core build is Eclipse, Prowler's Claw, Black Cleaver, and Edge of Night. You go Boots second, but pick between Mark Treads or Plated Steel Caps based on who you're facing mid. Your last item is situational, and will either be a Guardian Angel or Cyrilda's Grudge against a armor stacking team. Alright, moving on, we have a 600 LP Grandmaster on the Korean server who only plays tank Nidalee top that goes by the name Nidalee. They always start the game with the same cheese setup, where they put a trap in the river brush, then another on this specific spot in lane. They then look to catch the opponent as they run to lane, forcing them to walk into the traps as they rain down auto attacks. Otherwise, the early laning phase will consist of brush control, where you auto attack minions to get the push advantage, wait for your grasp to activate, and then look to land an auto attack to proc it. You then jump into the lane brush to de-aggro the lane minions. Proccing your grasp as much as possible is key to this strategy, since each one increases your max health. Getting the push advantage early on is also very important, since the main strategy is to just constantly harass the enemy while they try to last hit under their tower. That way, once an enemy is low enough, you can rebound the wave off the tower and try to all in them once you land a spear. A big part of the playstyle in lane is constantly harassing opponents from range, and then switching to cougar form to jump away when they try to fight back. Even if you trade equally, you have your heal to out-sustain them in the long run. It's very much a war of attrition, where you slowly chip away at their health until they're low enough you can actually one-shot them. You often want to be pushed up, baiting jugglers to gank you, since you have a lot of mobility in cougar form on top of your heal and the fact that you're building tanky. It will often waste their time, or just bait them into a counter gank from your jungler. Now, in order to understand why we can even build tanky, you first need to understand how Nidalee's marks work. Hitting enemies with a spear or having them walk over a trap will apply a hunted mark to them. This gives Nidalee both bonus movement speed as well as empowering her cougar form Q and W. Her Cougar form W will get its cooldown reduced when used on marked targets, while her Cougar Q will do bonus damage based on the opponent's missing health. We then want to combine this with the rune we'll be taking, Grasp, which does damage and heals you based on your max health. And that, combined with our heal, which increases based on our missing health, it all combines together to make you both extremely tanky while still being able to dish out enough damage to stat check enemies. You also want to take the Demolish rune, which means as you pin the opponent to their tower, harassing them, getting tons of Grasp procs, you'll look to proc your Demolish as well to get your turret plates and eventually the tower. Now, outside of the landing phase, look to land your spears on monsters to help move around the map faster, as it actually increases your Cougar leap range while also lowering the cooldown on it. In teamfights, you have a really unique playstyle. You're basically this tanky bruiser who has no form of crowd control. So you're basically just jumping on people, stat checking them, slowly getting them low, and then once you get too low in health, you use your Cougar form to disengage and look to heal yourself while poking them in human form. You can actually see this here. It's not like Nidalee is going to one-shot Yasuo, but when Yasuo finally turns on her and uses all of his abilities, he realizes there's no way he can actually kill her in time and has to switch targets. Overall, teamfights can be pretty dynamic where you can play more of a kiteback style with your team, focusing on the front line with them. Or you can be the one to start a fight and tank the enemy team while your teammates catch up and DPS from the back. Once you get too low, you just look to jump out to safety and heal back up. It actually looks hilarious when you get caught out, as the entire enemy team will start focusing you, only for you to casually leap away, tanking all of their damage. It actually looks hilarious in teamfights when you're just kind of casually standing there throwing spears while everyone is focusing you, doing barely any damage. You're basically just stat checking anyone who tries to trade damage with you. Now, the build is actually very important in making this work. You want to run Flash Ignite around 80% of the time, while taking Ghost Ignite is done when facing top laners that have high movement speed that are able to just run you down. For runes, you take Grasp of course, but Demolish is very important to take so you can destroy towers, along with Unflinching and Legend Tenacity in the secondary page. These two runes really help to prevent you from being crowd controlled and lets you disengage and kite around enemies. For your skill order, you take W first for the cheese strategy we showed you, then Q level 2 and E level 3. You then actually max your E first, Q second, W last, with a point in your ult whenever you can. The reason you max E first is it not only increases the heal, but also gives you a significant attack speed increase. This is what lets you rain down auto attacks as you kite players around and out sustain them. Now for the build. Your core build will be Iceborne Gauntlet, then either Plated Steel Caps or Merc Treads based on the enemy you're facing in lane, into Anathema's Chains. This combo is absolutely broken. Your Iceborne Gauntlet will create a force field on your attacks that not only slow the target, but also reduce their damage to you by 10%. Then, with Anathema's Chains, you mark the enemy laner as your nemesis, which means you'll take 30% less damage from them. So yeah, basically, they can't kill you. Your next items are situational. When facing heavy AP compositions, build Abyssal Mask, and when facing AD comps, build Thornmail. Your remaining items are picked from these 4 situational items based on what you need: Frozen Heart, Rylaze, Demonic Embrace, and Sunfire Cape. Next up, we have a 1000 LP challenger on the Korean server who only plays Pyke mid that goes by the name Sudang Kim. Honestly, this pick is amazing for low elo players. Hear me out. So at first, you are absolutely useless in lane. Like, you will literally spend the entire early laning phase basically just getting bullied while you try to get what CS you can. Your goal is simply to just survive as long as you can until you're forced to recall and teleport back to lane. However, once you hit level 6, you play the game completely different than everyone else. You completely ignore CSing, wave control, you know, the fundamentals of the game, and just roam whenever you see any opportunity to do so. The reason this works is actually kind of genius. So Pyke's ultimate grants your cut to the last assisting ally or himself in the event your teammate killed an enemy champion inside your ultimate when you casted it. Basically, all this means is that instead of getting a kill and an assist worth of gold, you're getting 2 kills worth of gold. So assuming both mid laners roamed and got the same amount of kills, while Pyke's roams are just innately more valuable as they will give more gold. What the strategy becomes is leaving your lane and constantly roaming and putting pressure on the side lanes, usually bot lane, and it puts the enemy mid laner in an incredibly awkward position. If they stay to farm waves and get turret plates, they will get ahead of you, but their bot lane will just implode and be super far behind. And if they try to match the roam, then they're just giving Pyke what he wants, whereas kills will always be more valuable. And there you go, you now know how to play Pyke mid. Survive as long as you can in lane while watching the map. The second you see a roam chance, just leave lane. The only chance to really counter this is to force a trade with Pyke before he can roam, since he's practically useless in the 1v1 in lane. Then you can pin him down, low on health, prevent him from roaming, and kill him. Once the laning phase ends though, it gets even funnier. When you have teleport up, you literally just play defense in a lane while waiting for any chance to teleport in on a fight. Otherwise, if your teleport is down, you head to a side lane to push and lure someone there. The second they show, just run away to roam and force a fight with the number advantage. Other than that, just group with your team around objective timers or literally whenever they want to fight, as Pyke is not only an amazing team fighter, but the additional gold generated from your ultimate and the experience gained from kills and assists is what is going to compensate for the lack of minions you're farming. So, for your build, go flash teleport to help survive the laning phase and make the TP plays later. For runes, you go pretty standard meta Pyke page, and for your skill order, take Q level 1, E level 2, and W level 3. Then max Q first, E second, and W last, with a point in your ult whenever you can. For your starting items, always go Doran Shield 1 HP pot to help survive lane, and your core build will be Ghostblade into Boots of Lucidity into Axiom Arc. So Ghostblade will not only give you a great damage spike at a very cheap price, but the passive and active massively boost your roams. Meanwhile, the Axiom Arc makes sure that your ultimate is always off cooldown, since that's where all your power is coming from. After this, build a Guardian Angel, then Edge of Night, and Frozen Heart as your final item for tankiness and the cooldown reduction. And for our final off-meta pick, we have a 1000 LP challenger on the North American server who's only playing Rumble jungle that goes by the handle T-Mall. Every single game, he'll start the same opening route, doing Raptors into Krugs into red, after which he ganks his closest side lane if they're overextended and killable. It doesn't matter which team he's on, he'll always start this route and look for that side lane gank even if it's a top laner. If by the time he finishes his red, there's no gank available on the side lane, he'll just continue pathing and typically default into a full clear. However, during the full clear, if at any point he sees a new gank chance, he will skip camps to execute that gank. Additionally, after his full clear, he'll always check the enemy's raptors to both get a timer on them, but also steal them if they're up into then looking to steal the enemy's Krugs. If those camps aren't up, he'll then look for this nice path behind the enemy side laner to gank them if they're overextended. For the most part though, he is careful about which lanes he ganks. He looks to focus lanes that lack mobility, since Rumble doesn't have any form of gap close or hard crowd control. He also takes Hex Flash in his rune page, so he can make plays like these, jumping over walls while his flash is on cooldown to get unexpected gank angles on laners. He will often use this just to get to his camps faster by jumping over walls. Otherwise, he'll focus on clearing, as Rumble actually clears camps quite fast. Not a lot of players know that both Rumble's Q, Flame Spitter, and his auto attacks when he's overheated actually do damage based on the enemy's maximum health. This is very strong against monsters, which is why Riot had to add a hard cap against monsters, but still, he has fantastic clear speed. Additionally, heat management is very important on Rumble, specifically prior to your gank. You have to make sure you're in his danger zone, which is above 50 heat. This is because it will enhance all of his abilities when they're casted while he's in the danger zone. If you notice on this gank, he has no heat available, so he casts his Q and W to generate some. It's still not enough though, so he uses 1E to put him in the danger zone, which you can tell because the bar turns yellow. Now, all of the remainder of his abilities will be empowered for the rest of this fight, making him way stronger. Typically, you then want to time your overheat when the enemy is low enough to kill with one more spell and a few auto attacks. You also have to apply the same technique when looking for picks. You cast your W and Q as needed to maintain your heat in the danger zone, that way when you engage, all your spells will do more damage. Now, once Rumble gets his ultimate, it becomes a lot easier to gank lanes. This is not only because of the insane range the ultimate has, it's actually due to the slow. Enemies hit by your ult, even just one tick of damage will be slowed by 35% for 1 second. This slow often gives you enough time to catch up to them when using your W speed boost to then run them down. And sometimes using this trick won't be enough to straight up kill people, but it's nearly impossible to play around, and so it can get enemies low enough that you can take objectives like towers and stuff like that after. A big part of making Rumble jungle work is forcing fights around objectives in the river though. Your goal is to get the enemies funneled into tight choke points, as it guarantees you'll land an amazing ult. Each side of the river will have these ramps and choke points that you should be looking to use. Additionally, with the max HP damage on his abilities, you'll be able to take objectives like Baron and Dragon really fast, all while getting the team fights you're looking for, so it's pretty much a win-win. There's also an important one-shot combo to know. You basically get high enough in heat that using all 3 of your abilities will overheat you. This way, when you engage on an enemy, you use all 3 of your basic abilities, overheat yourself, and that way you can hit them with empowered auto attacks and 100 to 0 them. Also, in teamfights, it goes without saying, you want to be on the lookout for that big ultimate hitting multiple enemies at once if you see they're grouped up. However, you should also be aware you can use your ult as an assassination tool by just aiming it on a squishy target. The slow will make it easy for you and your teammates to focus them down. Now, for summoner spells, you take Flash Smite. For runes, you want to go with a First Strike rune page, along with grabbing Ultimate Hunter in your secondary for the reduced cooldown. For skill order, you go Q level 1, E level 2, and W level 3, then max Q first, E second, and W last, with a point in your ult whenever you can. For items, you always have the same core: Demonic Embrace first, Sork Shoes, Rocket Belt into Zhonya's. You then want to build a Death Cap and Void Staff in whichever order is better based on the game you're in. You can also look to pick up an early Dark Seal whenever you can. If you get it to max stacks, turn it into a Mage Eyes, it helps you snowball really hard. And there you go. You now know 5 of the most powerful off-meta picks being used in the highest ranks worldwide. If you want to know how to start ranking up fast with any champion or role, then you need our service at skillcap.com. We focus on the things that actually help you climb ranks and simplify them so they're easy to understand. We have the most extensive collection of premium courses tailored for every role. Still skeptical? Don't worry, you can try out Skillcapped completely risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using Skillcapped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock this game-changing opportunity right now through the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and that will wrap things up. We here at Skillcapped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.